Welcome to the Wandering Tangent Podcast. I'm with me. I am here. With me is Jeff and Gary.
When you mess
And
up
today-
the introduction, it's so much better than when you get it right.
I mean, that's why I'm leaving it in. That's why I didn't start over. And today we're doing something a little different. We are talking about Tex, who is talking about Battletech.
Yes.
So, for those not in the know, which I assume before now included Jeff,
It did.
the Tex Talks Battletech series is, well, it's a series of historical lectures based in a fictional universe, shall we say, the Battletech universe, which is
extensively written. It's got books and games and
Yeah, it
comic
is.
books. Yeah.
had a Saturday morning cartoon back when we were
And a
kids.
morning cartoon. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Yes. And I can. Anyways,
But-
we'll get into that.
well, I mean, we might as well get into it because I don't know if we're going to circle around it. But the Saturday morning cartoon, which was of, shall we say, dubious quality, as all Saturday morning cartoons were back when Saturday morning cartoons were a thing. The Saturday morning cartoon was canonized into the actual Battletech setting. It is, and I'm sure Gary can correct me on this, it is a propaganda cartoon in the actual setting.
I can't remember which faction created it as a propaganda or it's being canonized as being
Probably sounds like a Lyran thing to do, maybe. Lyrans.
So this is a
Definitely
cartoon in
it
the
could-
90s, right? This is a few
Yes.
decades ago. Okay.
It was created in the 90s, but the authors canonized the events of it as being a propaganda thing that was created by one of the factions in universe to portray the bad guys in it, those being the clanners.
Oh. I mean, there's some debate there, I suppose you could say.
I haven't,
Anyway, that's,
but it was their
that's probably
portray
outside the scope of what we talked about, or what we watched, which was the episode on the Warhammer, which is
Yes.
a mech, not to be confused with Warhammer 40,000, which was part of the reason why Gary chose the episode, because he thought it would be funny. Ha ha.
a little bit. Okay, BJ, it was
I say it like
Ask-
that because I don't know, and I'm just going to get this out of the way. I'm going to run over Gary before I let him lead this conversation because I have no idea what we're going to talk about even. Back when Gary brought this up, he brought it up with just me because I had watched these before. I attempted to talk him into a different episode, maybe one that was a bit more beginner friendly, but Gary decided that it's his turn, and part of the reason why we let him do this is because it's going to be Gary's birthday soonish.
yeah.
Gary's birthday's on February 30th.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Gary decided to do this as his, it's my birthday, so we're going to do this leverage for the year.
specifically in this way. Partially because I really like this episode. I think it's one of the... Actually, it's somewhere in the middle of quality. Like, he has done way better than this, and he's done way worse than this. Admittedly, by his own admission. You know, by the creator's own admission, right?
Yeah.
They constantly get better, so the best ones are probably the most recent ones. But this one being somewhere in the middle is exactly that, somewhere in the middle. And yeah, I wanted to do it this way. Partially because, BJ had seen this, but Jeff had not. And I wanted to make sure that Jeff was exposed to this, in such a way as he got a more complete picture of this particular setting.
Well,
Or at least this particular portrayal of this particular
I say,
setting.
as mentioned, I don't know if this particular episode is the best. Here's your first stepping block, but it wasn't my choice.
So, Jeff,
Uh-huh.
initial thoughts and then I've got a thing for you.
Okay. Initial thoughts are, this is satire. It's satire about economies, about the human nature always going to be leaning towards conflict and paranoia and subservience to authority. It's satire about all of that. And it's good satire, but it's nerdism in to the nth degree. Like, it's not something that most people would be able to swallow. And I can appreciate it for what it is. It is a highly evolved world where people can geek out into with both weaponry of these mechs, these walking machines that have human pilots in them that do battles on different planets through space, based in the future, I guess 1,000 years in the future. And that's just the most basic of understanding. I enjoyed that one of the factions was a telephone company. I mean, that made me laugh. So there's a lot.
Oh,
Did I get that right? One of them.
Yes. Well,
yeah.
that is what so the narrator of this particular series of information, Tex, often refers to the company. BJ, what's the name of the company
ComStar.
again? ComStar. He refers to.
It does
to
sound like a phone
ComStar.
company. It does, ComStar.
It is a interstellar communications corporation on the surface. On the surface.
It is the interstellar communications.
They're the only ones with the technology capable of communicating between stars.
Well,
right? Instantaneously, more or less.
Yeah, I was going to say they're the only organization capable of faster than light communication.
Yeah, so they have their own private army, and they engage in battles and stuff.
Well,
yeah, right. That's what I read into it.
Yes. So, but yeah, like I said, maybe the Warhammer is not but I already said that. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe it's not ideal. But
there are other ones that explain that particular set of that particular information set better. This is just kind of it. Yeah, but so, but Jeff, if you're gonna dive into this rabbit hole, there's
it's
a lot of
such a deep
niches.
rabbit hole.
Yeah,
like
so,
there's so much stuff. Go ahead, BJ.
So ComStar. Long story short, they are nominally, whatever. How do you say that word? They are supposedly, let's go with that, supposedly neutral, but they have their own agenda. So
sounds like a phone company.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it's satire about all the quirks and strange things of developing weapons and greed and finance, and they have a currency of some kind they talk about.
Yeah,
it's like C-bills or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the C-bill is actually the currency. I don't know if it's controlled by ComStar, but the C-bill. So the value of the C-bill is based on like 1 second of. It's based on like how much it costs for X amount of time of use of the faster than light communication, and it is generally regarded as the universal currency of the setting, because each faction has their own what's the word?
Monetary system,
yeah.
Their own money. But then they have one common currency that they use for exchange. Yeah.
So I do have a question for Jeff, just to test to see how well he was paying attention.
I'm probably not going to succeed, but go ahead.
The
odds are against me.
I say this is probably my fault because we got a text from Jeff about 3 hours ago. It's the 2 hour when we're talking about, right? So I assumed that meant Jeff had not watched it, and so he was going to sit down to watch 2 hours of content 3 hours before we record. And he has kids. I'm like, he's not going to make it.
It was a hard watch in some ways, I admit. Like, I'm a nerd, but this is like in-depth nerdness in an extreme detail, which can be good. But go ahead with your question, Gary.
So the question I have is, what is the name of the presenter in this?
Oh no. Where's my cheat sheet? I don't have one. It was like text somebody.
Huh?
Jeff, what's the title of the video?
Battletech
Go to
something.
Discord.
Go to Discord.
Look at
That's
the
right.
thing.
Look at
It
the
says
answer.
blank
It's right
talks.
there.
What did I say at the very beginning?
Mech Warrior lore. Tech Talks Battles. Yeah.
Okay.
The Black
He
Pants.
read and didn't click, so go ahead and buzz him, Gary.
Not even the easy answer,
Well,
which
Tex Talks. His name is Tex.
There
Yes.
you go.
Yay.
there
took him
you
about-
go.
It took him about 30 seconds to process that after reading it out loud.
Was that his real
But-
voice?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh.
that is
Yes,
his
that
real
is, in
voice.
fact,
He's
his
got a
voice.
good voice for this kind of recording and
Actually,
lecture
he's got
series.
he's got a degenerative disease that is tearing away at his vocal box. The
What?
man has
Are
a
you
very
serious?
he's got a miserable life, which he tries to make better by making content for people on YouTube and trying to spread joy as much as he can in his own strange little way. This is
Okay.
by his own admission, by the way. But yes, he no, but BJ, I'm gonna ask you,
Mhm.
what is the name of the presenter? And this is in the video, BJ.
Like, is this a trick question?
Wasn't that the question I got?
So,
Yeah.
so Jeff gave the name of Tex, which is his call sign as a mercenary. This is in universe, Jeff.
This is
Oh,
his
okay,
character
so-
But
name.
BJ, what is the character's name?
Okay, yeah, let me go back and think of the text name they have at the very beginning of the video. I know there's a name in text they didn't even read out loud.
Yes.
What's name, Gary? Or did you already look it up so you could ask me this?
No, I wrote it down when I saw it initially.
Okay,
And then
so
and
you
then
cheated.
I'm going to note this, but I also gonna tell you a little factoid about this as well. But do you want to know, BJ? I mean, I guess you could go look it up, but I can just tell you. No? Yes? Did we lose BJ?
He's looking it up.
No, I just wanted to see what would happen if I stayed quiet. I was going to stay quiet longer, but then Gary's like, we lost audio. End the podcast.
Yeah,
We
ComStar,
lost BJ.
whatever, cut the connection.
ComStar cut BJ.
I didn't pay my phone bill.
You didn't pay your phone bill, so they
Okay.
came for you.
Yeah, and here we go, dropping Battletech memes that Jeff has no idea what we're talking about.
I have at least a 1% understanding.
So, to give BJ,
This is an obscure question. There's so
to-
much detail in this thing. Like, to take a full quiz on it, like, it's just like goes on and on about another mech and another mech. This mech's a little bit bigger, and
So,
this mech's smaller, and this
actually-
mech does this, and joke, satire.
So, to be fair, Battletech did just recently celebrate their 40th anniversary.
Mhm.
So,
It's an old setting, and Jeff, one of the interesting things about this setting is it's a lot more grounded in reality than a lot of other science fiction settings.
namely Warhammer.
Warhammer or Star Trek or Star Wars or a lot of the other ones. So,
I would say it's like on par-ish with Star Trek. It's maybe a little more hard sci-fi, but Star Trek isn't that far out there, really.
but as you've noticed, Jeff, it's not just the weapon system, the weapons and the weapon systems, and everything that happens in this universe is happening for reasons that people have thought about, for it's not just like
maybe not
come up with
everything that happens.
well, not everything happens. Admittedly, there is some hand wavy stuff. Huh? Oh yeah.
Dark Age.
He did say that maps and events after a certain period of time tend to get problematic. By the way, the person I'm talking about, Randolph P. Checkers, is the name, and that character is also canonized by Battletech authors. Tex found it quite amusing.
Okay.
Him and also the location, Jeff, you saw it for like a brief minute. The location where the lecture is taking place, Van Zant. That place is also canonized, and its location within the universe is stated constantly as being only the deep periphery.
I have come to the realization that Gary would have been like the worst high school teacher.
Why?
Unless he was teaching
because all your quizzes, because all the questions in your quiz would have been just the most obscure stuff that like didn't really matter to like the plot of the book you made the class read, but like you would have thrown it in anyway just to see if they were actually paying attention.
I would have said like teacher would have been perfectly.
On page 32, they mentioned one small thing one time in the entire book. I felt it was very important, so I'm going to ask you all to please state what exactly happened.
It's worth 100 points on the quiz.
Atreides chant the mantra against fear in Dune.
Something else.
You read the book how many times?
How many times did he do it? And then they would be like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, now you're a failure.
Oh, you failed.
This is how you failed. But so
all
Jeff,
the student loans were worth it.
And you're right. It is kind of a satire about how, on the other hand, there is the example that he wrote in this, while being slightly satirical, is also he did flash a picture. BJ, I don't know if you're aware of this. He did flash a picture. So when he was talking about the spaceship in this particular presentation, he flashed a picture very briefly of a certain warship that exists today, and it is noted as being slightly controversial. It's called the LCS. Jeff, are you familiar with that?
No. I know he talked about space battleships and how they were once a big thing, but now and then mechs came along and they were so much more important.
Well,
and
yeah,
but yeah, the actual nuances of detail.
Yeah, there's there's explanation to that, but it is probably outside the scope unless you want me to give me like the TLDR on that.
Whatever you think is best for the audience at this point.
I mean, I really have no. You know what? It's
a scary show.
Episode.
You're right.
You steer the conversation.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff.
I'm not being the host. You are the host.
I will give you the TLDR.
All right.
Spaceships were a thing, right? But then they realized that you can't just burn worlds. This was mentioned in this particular lecture series. You can't just burn
go down
worlds
on the surface.
Okay.
Well, make something
or more, not specifically like you can burn worlds, but there's no point in burning a world because then all you get is burned worlds.
Okay.
So you actually have to go down and fight. So the best way to go down and fight is to create something that can fight better than anything else on the surface of a world. Hence why you get giant robots.
Maybe I should have did the TLDR because I didn't like Gary's TLDR.
You know that you're both very capable nerds because you both can digest this stuff and summarize it quite well, I'm sure.
So you get this, right? But anyways, so there's this he was talking about a ship, right? And in the series, in the lecture, he talked about a ship, the ship being the Baron, and how there was this concept.
Is this a specific ship or a A series
class
of
of
ships.
ship.
A class,
A class
of
of
ships.
ships,
Okay.
yeah.
The Baron
So-
class. Got it. I
so
do
he
remember something about the Baron class. Something.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And how there's kind of this... Are you familiar with the term sunk cost fallacy, Jeff?
No.
It's where you put money into a project and then you realize that things aren't working out, so you put more money into that project thinking that you can fix it.
Uh-huh. But
Yeah,
it never really gets better, and you just
it
keep
never
throwing
gets-
money into it over and over again. Yeah.
And you think, and you can't stop because you
I know.
realize...
To stop would be to admit the whole thing was a mistake, so you have to keep going.
So you have to keep paying into this, and
Yeah.
you can't say that the billions of dollars that you've spent on this thing is for nothing, because it's so much money that you paid for it. You just need to finish it. Just a few more, just a little bit more resource, and you're gonna do it. And at some point you have to either accept the pile of garbage that you just paid for, or give up, right? And that's kind of what they had with the Baron. And Tex isn't saying that kind of thing happens in real life, except then he shows the picture of the LCS, which is something that happened relatively recently within U.S. Military procurement.
Mm-hmm.
LCS, if you look into that, that's a new line of American destroyers, which has a very similar kind of shaky start to its development.
Yeah, because they wanted them to be modular, but in the end, they're just incredibly expensive. Yeah.
And they don't perform as near as well as initially reported, and all kinds of other things like that. So there's kind of this idea of, there's that idea where it's the sunk cost fallacy, and the Baron being a prime example of that. On the other hand, so there was the Baron was being developed by one of the factions in this, kind of one of the central factions, and then there's a periphery faction that was developing its own line of ships to defend itself, called the faction being the Taurian Concordat, and they developed their own line of frigates, because the Baron is a destroyer. They developed their own line of frigates to defend themselves, and the line of frigates they developed was called the Concordat line, and apparently they developed this, had this mindset of just build something that's good enough for right now, and we'll get it out the door. And good enough is, as he states, it's just perfect. So that's why you get, and that kind of mindset builds you a mech being referred to as the Warhammer, right? And the Warhammer is good enough for right now. And that's what that's kind of the moral of the story of this particular presentation.
Yeah, there's a lot of satirical stuff, humorous stuff about how people try to over-engineer things, and they end up making everything worse because everything is designed by committee and they have all these ideas. And in the end, what really works is what is more practical and much more simple. And I think that's kind of the synopsis of this 2-hour lecture is, by the way, the Warhammer turned out to be basically good. And then they have these nice screenshots with great music as he does this poetic monologue at the end, praising the Warhammer. Yeah. It was, I guess, entertaining. Probably entertaining to mostly us nerds, but...
Yeah, and I've shown clips of this to my wife, and very short clips, because to warn people if they want to go listen to this stuff. Tex has a very foul mouth. He likes to swear a lot. Just be ready for that. But I have shown very short clips to my son as well, and he thinks it's kind of funny as well. Certain portions of it. And there's many videos covering many different mechs and events within the storyline. And then so it's kind of interesting. This entire setting was kind of going downhill, wasn't it, BJ? For a while there.
Oh,
I
don't know. Like Battletech has never been like super popular. Like even within like the nerd sphere,
It has a loyal group of fans, I imagine.
It has a loyal group of fans, and obviously it's doing business because it's still going 40 years later, even though the IP has changed hands a few times, and I'm starting to lose my voice. Excuse me. I believe the IP has changed hands a few times. It is recently, I shouldn't say recently, but it is most recently controlled by Catalyst Game Labs, which has kind of breathed new life into it. It has most famously had a couple of highly successful Kickstarter campaigns, which I also bought into, and now I have a bunch of mechs that I should probably say this at some point. At some point, I believe I mentioned this probably in Gary, I'm going to forever hate you for making us watch the Warhammer episode, because now I have to specify what Warhammer I'm talking about. In our Warhammer 40,000 episode, I believe I mentioned the fact that at some point being pre-COVID, I had the idea of like, okay, I'm going to start buying these miniatures, and then I'm going to start going out and talking to people at like these game stores and stuff. And then as soon as I started doing that, and I did for a little while, and I had fun, then the pandemic happened, and then I had all kinds of fun health issues after the pandemic. So I just kind of crashed and burned on the weekend rather than going out and doing stuff. And now here we are, 5 years later, and my pile of gray plastic shame is vast. And
so you've never played the game, but you are prepping to one day have a big...
I don't know. Apparently y'all don't remember this, but we did actually play it at least one time.
Oh, we did? You
guys, yes. Think way back when, way long, many, many moons ago, before we could even drive. I think it was Jeff's idea, but I can't remember.
Oh, we went to the public library?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that was a long time ago.
Yes. There was a game of Warhammer and a game of Battletech there. And these older gentlemen and us we were like 12 at the time, something like that.
Yeah.
They tried, bless their hearts, they tried to play along with us, but we were young, dumb kids who had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, that's true. But they were nice about it. Yeah, it was a really good gaming club.
I remember the Battletech guy being nicer than the Warhammer guy, because the Warhammer guy is like, I just killed your entire squad.
And I remember I moved my pieces in the wrong order, and then they were like isolated without a leader, and therefore unable to move. Yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah, and I guess that's another difference between Battletech and Warhammer 40,000 is that Battletech tends to focus on smaller unit. There's
not as many pieces, because
right?
Yeah, because your Battletechs are like big and powerful, and damage, whereas Warhammer is like you have this vast numbers of guys.
You're like I could be wrong in this, because again, I have not gone out in the world and actually played a pickup game of Battletech, partially because I hear it's hard to find a pickup game Battletech, because most game places just play Warhammer. But to my understanding, the common force layout is lance versus lance, a lance being 4 mechs, whereas in Warhammer it is armies.
Yeah, you're gonna have entire multiple squads plus vehicles,
which depending on your faction could range from 20 pieces to 50 something.
Yeah.
That is more your realm.
Let me
The
think.
Warhammers numbering 40,000.
It's so yes, I am master of all 40,000 of the Warhammers. But but if you wanted to go like pure horde, you could get 100 plus models on the board if you wanted to. Trust me, you don't want to. It's you're going to go crazy if you try to push that many models across the table.
Yeah.
A horde of, kind of a higher quality horde of 50 would probably be about right. Sometimes you can get as few, there are some armies where you can get as low as 10 models in the entire, and that would be, actually no, there are some armies where you could, if you really wanted to, you could just do like 5. But those are like 5 really big models.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like knights.
Yeah, that's knights. And Jeff, so knights is like giant robots in Warhammer 40K.
Well, never mind. I'm not gonna...
On the scale of, giant robot versus infantry, so it's kind of an interesting way of playing the game. But anyways,
so it's like having a mech inside Warhammer.
Well,
yes, it pretty much is.
There's gianter robots in Warhammer, but that's kind of the whole thing of Warhammer, is that it gets more stupid.
Yes. If on the other hand, this particular setting, the Battletech setting, only really gets up to 100 tons, and after that they're like, that just sounds kind of stupid. We're not going to get bigger than that.
I think there's like a handful of super heavy mechs, but
yeah,
it's by and large
super assault mechs, and after that, usually they get up to like, I think one is called the King Crab, another one's called the Atlas, but basically those are your 110 mechs, and they are just ginormous.
But bigger isn't always better. Sometimes hiding.
Oh,
okay. You're like, no, big is good.
Sometimes you need an anvil to pound on, right?
Oh,
okay.
It's as with everything, it depends on what you're going for. I mean, outside of the memes I suppose I should probably ask, did you watch the comedy after the lecture proper, Jeff, or did you just watch the lecture?
I watched the skits afterwards, and in some ways they were even harder to understand than the lecture itself.
Okay, yeah, I guess
a lot of that's like inside jokes. So
yeah, inside jokes.
Did
some
you
of the
watch
people,
the little?
I was gonna say, now that I think about that, that's probably not the best introduction to the concept of the Steiner Scout Squad.
Did the little cartoon right at the end? Did you watch that, Jeff?
I watched it, but there was some serious like tuning out, tuning back in. But I did watch it twice, trying to pick it all up.
Okay, so the concept of the Steiner Scout Lance is that, in concept, there are many kinds of mechs, right? Like the Lies mechs are, like in-game Lies mechs are, Lies mech I know about is 20 tons, and then it goes up to, it goes up to 100 tons. And in most armies, they use Liar mechs as scouts, recon, harassing, that sort of thing. Then you have the Lyran Commonwealth. And the Lyrans are known for being very rich and by solving problems by throwing the most expensive stuff at it. So the joke is that a Steiner Scout Lance is 400-ton mechs, because that's all Steiner does, because that's all the Lyran Commonwealth does, which is led by House Steiner, and then the whole thing with the great houses and whatever. Anyway, the joke is, that's the joke. Is that
that's the joke?
They'll hit you. They'll scout you with the biggest, heaviest forces they have, and that's a scout. It's like,
they show up with all the toys.
Yes.
It's still
but that's as a recon. A light recon element is the biggest, heaviest stuff they have.
it counts as a stealth mission if no one lives. It counts as a stealth mission if no one lives to tell the tale that you were there.
Right. Okay.
And so that is
Now that I think about, Tex is, as someone who enjoys Universe, Tex is great fun for me, and I know he is a way for that a lot of people got introduced to this setting, but I don't know if Tex talks are the best way to learn about the setting if you're not like already in,
well, we did kind of give the 101 to Jeff, and hopefully some of it got in there, but
yes, but you made him watch the 101 and then
threw him into the Warhammer. Yes,
yeah, like the 101 didn't really, the Warhammer episode didn't really build on anything the 101 talked about, because the 101 was more about the great houses, and the Warhammer episode didn't really talk about any of the great houses, so it wasn't a very smooth lead-in, I thought, after watching them back to back.
But Jeff, just know that, so one of the interesting things about this setting, as from a gaming perspective, is that so there's multiple settings for this particular game. If you want to play it on tabletop, there's multiple settings.
Setting might not be the best word. It's more time frames. Eras, they call them.
Eras. So currently the most popular is set, what is it, 3025? BJ?
I don't know the exact dates.
That's kind of where everybody says the beginner level is 3025-ish, between 3025 and 3050.
Are you talking
basically
about
the time period
wars?
End of Succession Wars, beginning of Clans, right?
Clan was 3050, I think.
Yeah. So Jeff, it's kind of the end of a whole bunch of wars which knocked technology and society back quite a ways, right? So people were kind of rediscovering technology, and it's kind of exciting. So things are relatively simple from a gameplay perspective, right? You don't
simple
get into
and BattleTech gameplay, maybe.
Yeah, BattleTech is really a kind of a very crunchy game to play. There's a lot of rules heavy sort of thing.
Yeah, I get that. A lot of rules, a lot of little figures to buy.
Not that many if you wanted to.
Okay.
Actually, that's from a. I mean, if you want to buy, you can buy a whole bunch.
The many rules, though, is one of the draws to the game.
Yeah.
There's people who, they don't want to just play checkers. They want the complicated stuff with tables and percentages or whatever.
And roll like 50 dice to find out exactly where each bullet landed on that giant wall of steel that you call a robot.
Yes.
Well, actually, in BattleTech, it's pretty much only like do 2 dice at a time. If you want to roll like pocketfuls of dice, that's more of a Warhammer thing.
Yeah. So yeah, you get
each
this.
10 guys shoots 3 shots with this gun, and then 2 shots with this gun. This gun hits on 3s. This gun hits on 4s.
So yeah, Jeff, it's kind of this weird, rules heavy setting. But if you wanted to play, you could play in multiple different eras, right?
Okay.
Is this going somewhere, or are you just out to like confuse Jeff more?
No, I'm just saying that if you so when people are talking about the gameplay of this, it could be you could have the same chassis, but it could be doing wildly different things depending on which era you're in.
Basically, so like towards the end of the lecture, Tech starts talking about the different configurations of Warhammer. That's basically what Gary's saying.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's kind of an interesting. I appreciate the simplicity of this particular mech. It was just one of the
Warhammer.
reasons why I wanted to talk about this one. I know, BJ, it wasn't the best one to go into, and actually there is even simpler.
I wasn't going
mechs.
to say anything.
There's even simpler mechs, but this one kind of has the basic idea down to a T, where you get a giant robot and it's got 2 arms, and each of those arms has big gun on it, and you stomp forward and you shoot those guns at the enemy, right? It's relatively simple in concept. There's even simpler ones, and it's actually probably one of the better episodes, Jeff. I recommend you continue watching these. They are very entertaining. But if you're going to, I recommend you try the Hunchback, maybe.
If we're
BJ
speaking
disagrees.
of places, I like the Hunchback episode, but like, I'm just saying, if someone chose Tex Talks as a place to tip their toes into the universe, I would recommend, like, say, the Mackie episode, where they kind of talk about why battle mechs are a thing. Yes, it's cool to learn about the individual battle mechs, but if you're looking for context of the universe, maybe the individual mech episodes aren't the best.
Yeah, but it's where you have fun. Anyways, so yes, the Mackie, probably followed by the Star League Civil War episode. That would probably be the best one to explain what's going on in the setting, Jeff. There is also another one where it says where it's clans. Was the Exodus to Elementals? Is that the one, BJ?
Yes.
So
that
those
is like 4 hours of stuff. So that is a humdinger.
Yeah. That's no. It's actually 6 because the clans Elementals to whatever, that one's like a 2-hour episode, and then there's like the other ones are also each 2 hours, right? There's like 2 episodes of Star League Civil War, and each of those is like 2 hours, isn't it?
I was just talking about the clan one.
Yeah, the clan one I thought the clan one was like just 2 hours.
There's a clan part 1. There's a Primer on the Clans part 1 and Primer on the I'm looking at the list now, Gary.
Oh, okay.
There's a Primer on the Clans part 1, Primer on the Clans part 2.
Oh, okay. So there's like 8 hours there, Jeff, of listening that will kind of put, establish what the heck is going on in this setting. And that's
Gary,
after the Mackie.
Good job on selling this.
After the Mackie.
Just watch this 10 hours of content. It will all make sense.
Actually, Jeff, okay. But here's the thing. This is really... you don't need to necessarily watch this. This is the kind of thing that you could just listen to. Kind of put it on and then listen to it as you're driving or whatever. It's almost like an audiobook in that particular sense.
Gary, I love you, man, but you're doing an awful job of pitching this.
You can spend hours learning about the procurement of unusual weapon systems.
I'm just saying that you don't have to watch it. If you want to listen to it, that's fine. Just don't expect to get the question on the quiz right, because we're going to ask about the thing that showed up as text only at the very beginning.
I asked that because I'm very particular about this. He would need that. Actually,
this is all so complicated, it could be a college course. Just the level of depth to it all. And I think go ahead.
To be fair, pretty much any setting that's been around for a very long time is like this. Like, I know that you know things about Star Trek that I don't, right? Like,
yeah, it just builds over time. And
yeah,
with this, there's been more books, another show, more adding to the canon over and over again.
Like
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
If we had to ask, Jeff, why do Star Trek ships have, or why did the Federation have a giant, basically a plate with like weird stuff coming off of it? Why are all Federation ships like that? You'd probably have an answer, right?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I don't have to give it to you. I'll spare you that moment. But yeah, your point is there's answers, and like with this,
Actually, Gary, now that I think about it, I do have a question to ask about Star Trek. If I may tangent away from your
Yes, you may tangent
lecture.
away.
This is
BJ.
unexpected.
Yes, go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, it may be something you know, maybe something you don't know. So feel free to just say I don't know if you don't know. Why did the Federation barter away the use of cloaking technology
To the Romulans. Yep.
Why is the Federation like the only faction that can't use cloaking technology when this obviously extremely useful technology?
Yes. There's an episode
which puts them at a severe disadvantage.
Yeah, because the Romulans can hide and the Federation can't hide.
The Romulans use cloaking. Don't the Klingons use cloaking?
Yes. The
Everyone
Klingons
uses cloaking except the
treaty.
Federation. Why did the Federation say, you know what? Y'all can do that. Well, we'll treaty away our use of...
The Federation decided it was a good tactical decision to give up on it. They'd only really need it for fighting the Romulans. And I guess the Klingons, if it ever came to it. But the decision was, if we have cloaking technology, they're going to be even more scared of us. And it's a sacrifice. They went to the table, they needed to negotiate with something. And that was a chip in the table that they could use. The Romulans attack the Federation because they're worried about them. They are an alliance of many worlds. It's potentially something that could grow into an enormous power, even though it's got all these wonderful words of peace and all these positive vibes that come from the Federation. In the end, the Romulans don't believe any of that stuff. So do the Klingons. They see it as that this kind of like ties into Battletech. Like they see it as people or living sentient alien species. They're all just out for themselves. So there's no way the Federation is not out for themselves. And in Star Trek 6, the Klingons even say the Federation is like a Homo sapiens only club. It's really just all about the humans. And so it's a facade. And the Federation, of course, doesn't see themselves that way. They're trying to build a unification of worlds that are peaceful, who cooperate, who get along with each other, who share ideas freely with each other, and who build a utopian society interstellarly. But the Romulans are just... Yeah, so anyway.
As long as your ship is shaped like a plate with stuff poking off of it.
No.
Yes, exactly. Yes. You have the engine away from where the people normally sleep. That's... I guess.
As long as it's shaped like a plate.
Your big, huge reactor is
be nice
not
to
right
Jeff.
next to it.
I know.
We've been talking over Jeff said this entire episode. Let Jeff have his moment.
Okay, you go
okay.
Have your moment.
But yeah, so the answer is there's actually an episode. There is an episode where there's an admiral who hates that they gave up the cloaking device. And so he even does some somewhat unscrupulous things to try and get an advantage on the Romulans, which turns out to be a big fiasco, and Picard challenges on it. So it's like a whole thing. So it is a controversial choice in the Federation, but they believe in it because they don't want to fight the Romulans till the end of time. The treaty was supposed to end the war and have a very uncomfortable Cold War with the neutral zone that they have to constantly patrol and be constantly paranoid about the Romulans trying to do stuff to them. So yeah. Okay. You're right, BJ. It is kind of dumb, but when you make peace, sometimes you got to make big concessions. And that's the lesson. You know, if the Romulans ever attacked, I guess they could just like make one up real quick. They probably even have the technology somewhere.
They could probably just put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah. They probably could. They probably have a similar Romulan one. They just won't use them. In fact, the Defiant, I'm going on and on again, but the Defiant had one, which the Romulans authorized. So they could get one. It's just, they choose not to for the sake of not angering the Romulans and maintaining the peace.
Okay.
And go ahead. I'm now shutting up. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Genie back in the bottle. Okay. We let Jeff be happy for a few minutes in this episode. Carry on, Gary.
Actually, I was just going to wrap up here. Things are progressing along. I think I should just kind of tie things on with a little bow, bring things back, because that's actually one of the subjects in this particular one. Why you would not use starships, why you'd use battle mechs is because it actually, is a thing in Battletech.
Okay. Yeah.
Why don't you just nuke everybody?
Yeah. So
why?
Because you're actually trying to
armies. Because you're
trying to save some of the infrastructure.
You
basically.
You have something to conquer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say I'm gonna give a little more detailed TLDR. So long story short, as to the reason why battle mechs became a thing is because during, I think this is the Age of War, right?
Yeah.
So during what is called the Age of War, warships, which is the in-universe term for space battleships, whatever, were the default military unit, which meant that pretty much nukes were default ammo, which led to, as you might imagine, when nukes are the default, it doesn't leave much behind. So in universe, they created what is basically the future Geneva Convention, called the the Ares Accords?
Ares Conventions.
Whatever.
They call it Ares.
Something like that.
But same idea.
Yeah. So basically, it outlaws the use of large scale weaponry in that aspect, and I guess another important factor which we kind of touched on but didn't bring up is that so Battletech history TLDR, there so after mankind colonized the stars, there was the quote unquote golden age when there was the Star League, right? But the Star League fell apart in a massive civil war, which left pretty much no heir to the throne of the Star League. So the 5 biggest houses, great houses like noble families, after the fall of the Star League, all went to war with each other to claim the Star League, and during these wars, mankind nuked their own libraries, and these wars were so bad that it basically set mankind back. So mankind no longer has the capability of creating new faster than light ships. So the jump ships that do exist are considered off limits to combat. No one wants to blow up a jump ship because we need those, right? So even warships don't really exist anymore because they all got destroyed during these great big wars. So mankind is finding, or I guess rediscovering, old technologies, and that's kind of why the clans were a thing, but that's its own ball of wax as to why the clans were scary when they invaded. But yeah, so it's deep.
So it's kind of a utopian, not utopian, but at least
utopian in air quotes, depending on who you no, not really hence the quote around the golden age. It depends on who you ask.
So, but it was more peaceful, but then that fell
Depends
apart.
on who you ask.
Depends on who you ask. Okay.
Yes. If you ask the people in the inside of the Star League, it was great. If you ask the people on the periphery, it wasn't so great. But that's its own thing, Jeff.
So different groups have different perspectives. Yeah.
It depends. If you're the person that wins the Unification War, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not the person that won the Unification War, it wasn't so great.
Yes. But yeah, it's a very large and very prolific setting, and I know I did the absolute worst job, Jeff, of trying to sell it to you, but I still think it's an awesome setting. Yeah,
yes,
me and BJ. Yeah, you could.
We could have done better on, but I quite enjoyed. I imagine Jeff's gonna be like, I'm never gonna talk about this again. I'm gonna go back to my Star Trek and my Star Wars, my hyperspace, and my warp.
And that's kind of where I'm gonna leave things off to go do things, BJ. So I'm gonna say my piece, and then if you guys want to say your piece.
Okay.
So yeah, that's just it. I think it's a great setting. And this Text Talks Battletech is a great way to get into it. So that's all I gotta say. BJ or Jeff?
I can go. So the one takeaway I would have from all of this would be that I always think that it is a very healthy thing to have lots of output and not just input. And there's a lot of great books and movies and great lectures to absorb, and those are all good. It's also great to think about things and question them and to generate output from the input, like a computer. You get data, you process the data, you create some sort of something as the conclusion. And what I like about this YouTuber in particular is that he's doing what he's passionate about and he's having fun with it, and people are enjoying the geek out levels. They're enjoying the satire. They're enjoying going in depth about the mechanics of these stories and the machines within them, which is fun. People love to use their mind to go into details, to think about how and why the things are, and to make some jokes along the way. So the whole thing, I think, is positive. Even though it was a lot of detail, it's a detail that I think all nerds can understand. And maybe those who are not as nerdy might not fully understand, but it's just it's good to be passionate about things. And that's my takeaway.
Yeah, I'm not sure who this episode was for, other than for Gary and making Jeff watch something about Battletech on Gary's birthday. Happy birthday, I guess, Gary, on February 30th.
Thank you.
Gary's 100 years old.
Sometimes it feels that way, BJ. Sometimes it does.
Gary, happy century mark, Gary. Yay. Just imagine the cake with all those candles. Holy cow. That's what set off the smoke detector last week.
Could be.
Anyway. So yeah, that was an episode of the Wandering Tangent podcast. I can't imagine anyone's still here to hear the outro, but we're going to do it anyway. I'm BJ. I'm still with me. I'm still here.
You're still with you.
I'm still with me.
BJ is still with him.
Is BJ with us?
He's with him.
I'm a medium for myself. Also with me was Jeff and Gary. Mostly Gary. Jeff was just kind of, I don't know what's going on anymore.
What are they talking about?
What are they talking about? At least last time they talked a really nerdy subject, I wasn't here. Gary made me show up for this episode. It's for my birthday,
I should put
Jeff,
that on
Gary
a t-shirt.
said.
Gary made me show up for this episode.
No, it's okay, Jeff. Maybe for your birthday you can make us watch some more bad Star Trek or something in retaliation.
Yeah, because apparently the bad Star Trek is what I tend to choose. Yes.
Apparently. Well.
Apparently.
Wow.
From the history of this podcast, yes.
Yes, Jeff. That's exactly what you make us watch.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
There's a complaint filed to the complaint department about that.
Last time you chose to contact management.
Yeah.
I am management. I don't know. I'm BJ. With me was Jeff and Gary. We're going to stop this madness now before Gary gets mad that we haven't ended. We'll see you next time for something, I'm sure. Heck, maybe next... I never mentioned back we didn't have a review this episode because we didn't know how to review was basically lecture. No review. So don't go looking for that.
Yep.
But probably one next week time. I keep saying next week, but we're bi-weekly, not every week. Anyway, bye. I'm stopping now. See you guys later. Bye-bye, everybody.